Okay, so I haven't done a Q&A for a while, but recently on our community forum there was a great question posed on one of the threads that I thought would benefit the YouTube community. So I'm going to do my best in this clip to answer the question as fully as possible. What would be the best trading advice I could give to my younger self? So hindsight's always a wonderful thing, to look back at what you should have done, and you can't get any value from that, but hopefully you guys will be able to get some from me in this, because I'll be able to pass what I would have said to my younger self. Now, the first thing that I would make a strong case for to my younger self would be trading success that I've had has, at least 90% of it, I would say, is based around things that I've done outside of the market. And that's an undeniable fact in the sense of things that I've learned. So you always hear this 10,000 hours thing, or 10,000 markets maybe in trading is what it takes to become an expert, as people say, which is probably partially true. But if you were to rely purely on a sense of intuition and experience, having seen lots of different markets alone, then you're going the long way round. And you can severely shorten that path by focusing on the important factors, and the important factors alone, outside of the markets. So in the sense of defining and understanding different market variables and characteristics that occur, and also your own self-learning, self-awareness. And actually I'm fully aware that not long after I started to succeed and I made a couple of YouTube videos, probably the first one or two, I spoke about self-awareness back then, and I would really sort of dive into that heavily, even earlier on, if I was to give that advice to my younger self. It's come up on the forum already quite a lot. Discipline is the be all and end all. Quite frankly, if you're not disciplined in your approach, in the sense of when you are trading, but also when you're learning about trading, then you're not going to get very far very quickly. So you need to sort of accept that right from the start, because without it, you're screwed. It's the same in any field, I'm sure, in the sense that you need to consistently audit yourself and your own behaviour, what you're actually doing with your time, how you're perceiving things, and if you're becoming emotionally charged. And that's something that I've said in terms of trading in the past, but it kind of applies on many different levels. Productivity and that kind of stuff as well, but it's not necessarily what you do, but it's more about what you're not doing, or what you're making an effort not to do. So there's loads of information out there on the internet, different websites. Some of it's great, majority of it's a bit rubbish. Obviously we've got the blog and stuff like that as well. There's a mixture of content over time on there, and the different courses, but I would say you really need to sort of laser in and focus heavily on the important pieces and the most useful sources, because wasting all that time is much like sitting there in front of 10,000 markets. It's not going to do a huge amount for you. In fact, it may send you off on a tangent, get frustrated, do irresponsible, foolish things, and dig yourself a bigger hole, and extending that learning time. So save plenty of time, focus on the important resources, and focus on stuff outside the market, which is going to impact what you actually do in the market, and how you approach it, and more importantly what you don't do in the market. Sitting there mindlessly trading different situations the same way, expecting to get the same result from each situation, it's just not going to happen. You need to be willing to be contrarian. You heard that from myself, many other people before. It's obviously true, but when you're sort of sitting there following market after market, and you're just listening to any old piece of information, or maybe sometimes gossiping on social media, that kind of thing, listening to other people's point of view and opinions, obviously they all have their own place, but what are you doing there? You're not really behaving like one of the 5% really. You're behaving like the masses, therefore you're more of a lemming than a contrarian, and that's not going to benefit you and help you sort of build into having a successful edge. So I would tell myself that, and I would just say all of that wasted time, just cut it out, completely cut it out. Focus purely on limitations, characteristics, things that drive the market, indicators, and talk more about that in a second, and sort of those windows of change within a market. Because at the end of the day, if you understand limitations and change, and when the change occurs and why it occurs, that's where the gold's hidden. That is the most important points, which all of that you can learn outside of the market. And you can sort of rationalise and find logically why that happens. So that's why I say the best work is outside of the market. Going back to the previous point about self-learning as well, you need to be very aware of yourself, your own personal tics emotionally. Again, there's an emotional thread in the forum, something that's come up a lot recently. And if you understand what sort of ticks you off and sets you off emotionally before it happens, then there's a greater chance of you actually limiting or stopping altogether, stopping actually happening, which leads into you doing all those wrong things that I'm telling you to avoid. It's like the whole boxing analogy, which I posted on a blog a little while ago. But the great thing about trading is we pick and choose when we get involved. So you can sit back, you can see the different opportunities unraveling, and you don't even have to get involved. You can wait until the odds are really stacked in your favour before you step in and give it a killer blow to pull some profit out of the markets. So there's no, in this instant gratification world we're stuck in, where it's constantly stimulated and have to be doing something all the time. By not doing that, you're actually making yourself closer to that smaller 5% to be the contrarian that succeeds. It's quite obviously hidden in plain sight. It's kind of like the phrase that I like to use previously, but that's pretty much how it is. You need to trade what you see rather than what you want to see. And when you become emotional and you're not aware of your own tics and behaviour, you are not trading what you see. You're trading what you want to see, or what you're frustrated about, or fearful, fear of missing out, all those kind of things that sort of get dragged into the mix. I talk about it a lot in the video pack, but focusing on limitations and all of the characteristics and sort of adapting to each individual situation is extremely important. Or avoiding all those situations that don't really apply to what you're doing and just getting involved in those ones where you are clear and happy with where your edge is in the market is a massive benefit. So focus on those limitations, not the actual profit, not the targets, and all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, look, I'm not against chasing the profit, because that's what everyone's here to do. I have over time. It's just I don't believe that the fastest way to get it is through chasing the numbers. It's focusing on the game is the quickest way to succeed, and all the different aspects of the game, rather than the produce being the profit or performance. The second bit of advice I'd give to my younger self would be brutally realistic. And if that means being really cold and hard, then do it. I'm not saying be fixed viewed. I'm saying you got to remain open-minded, but be cold and hard in being realistic as to what's actually happening. Myself with results, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, learning is going to be a painful experience. First off, it is no matter what you do. It just happens that in trading it's financially initially in the early stages. It doesn't really have to be like that, because you can use training mode and start on smaller stakes. But accept the fact that it's going to be painful, and if you're not willing to go through that, then don't even play. Just stop. Don't even bother. It's part of it. You need to get over it before it even sort of occurs. So that would be some bigger advice for myself there. And the fact that I need to have an edge, a physical sort of definable edge, whether that means it changes in lots of different situations, that's fair enough. But you need to have an edge, and you need to understand the fact that there's nothing fluffy about it. It's black and white. Is there an advantage in this situation? Are the odds stacked in my favour, or are they not? Because when opportunity presents, you need to stake up and take everything you possibly can in that situation, and that's not relative to your own feelings. The two are separated. So I would say, on those situations where something's going to be or something's expressed in front of you and you're like, hell, this is a really good opportunity, then make the most of it. Take all the money, stake it up, go for it. Don't hold back. Don't get rid of this, separate the two and get rid of this notion of it's a job, it's an hourly rate. You're going to make £10, £10, £10, £10, and that might be the case in some situations, but the chances are it's going to be like 5, 10, 50, and so forth. But don't be frightened to go for the 50 when you're presented with the opportunity in front of you there. Be quite cold about the whole thing, and take what the markets give you. To do that as well, you need to be realistic with setups and stuff like that. I was a little bit slow to get some of the different things and different feeds and whatnot, but if you need to, get them straight away. If you can, get them straight away, because having a lack of information is actually handicapping yourself, setting yourself at a disadvantage, and that's the cold reality of it. Plan ahead and try to avoid getting yourself in those messy situations. Maybe if you don't have live pictures, for example, or you haven't thought about further charges in the future and that kind of sort of guff, then think a little bit further ahead and be brutally honest about the restrictions within the situation. The third thing that I would give to myself as some advice would be always look longer term. Now, that goes against the grain of probably what most of the people watching this clip want. And I'm not frightened to say that, because longer term always wins. Historically, wherever you look, longer term always wins, and having a shorter term mindset, there's no benefit to it whatsoever. It's not very clear at all. You need to accept, both in the markets and outside of the markets, that having a longer term view is more beneficial to the bottom line, period. You make better decisions when you're not forced into a situation, or feel like you're forced to produce, etc. And the fact that money's involved, it just makes the whole thing worse, because it biases your decision reading type view on things. So go longer term, forget the get rich quick scheme type attitude and all that sort of stuff, and the passive kind of approach and income and living on a desert island. All of that comes if you look longer term, is what I'm trying to say. And I've probably chucked that in there as well, because I see a lot of people saying they're coming from match betting and whatnot, and I think that's a natural progression and step in towards Betfair trading. But people go from having this one system of 1, 2, 3, I make a few quid, and they're expecting to get exactly the same on a huge amount more money, and it doesn't really work like that. There's so many more variables involved, although on the flip side, the profit is far more. It's available on an individual basis, and accept where you are right now is probably nowhere near as far down the line as you think it is. Now, I could say that to myself, 2012, 2013 as well. Chances are, if you, in fact, not chances are, but if you drop that way of looking at things and kind of assume, in terms of my trading career right now, I'm fetal, I'm the baby, I know nothing. If you accept that, then you're actually putting yourself in a far more productive situation to flourish and progress. So always go long term. That's something that I think overspills in all sorts of areas of life, but when you look at anything else, business, whatever, whoever took the long-term approach wins, generally speaking. It just releases and removes that restriction that you put on yourself in terms of self-limitation. So I think that concludes 3 things there that I would certainly I'd really want to ingrain and hammer into my mind as my younger self if I'm looking to progress, and that's probably the whole lot there. So if you've made it to the end of this clip, please let me know if there's anything else you think that of massive importance towards younger self, or it'll be productive for other people watching this clip, and stick it in the comments below.